welcome to my channel. Today's video is something that I have been wanting to discuss for quite some time. Um, I know that people are doing a lot of healing and talking about a lot of things, but for some reason, I feel like there's still something missing. There's still something that's going on. There's still a level of hatred, dysfunction, hostility, and whatever else that is still happening. People are still getting hurt. It seems like there's a lot of healing, but in the effort to heal, people are still getting hurt, you know? And every day, I think people wake up and they try to have a good day, want to interact with their family, their children, whatever it is. They want to have a good day at work, your spouse, whoever that it is, in all their relationships, because people are tired. That COVID was a lot really tough. People were dying. People are still dying, younger than ever. I mean, I haven't. This is the most that I've ever seen in terms of young adults who are in their 30s and 40s who are passing away from various, illnesses, diseases, and whatever else is going on, and it's alarming, and I don't know if it is from work, stress, trauma. I have no idea why there is, seems like there's an uptick in the young adults. People are getting younger, sicker younger. They're getting sicker younger, and they're going through all of these different things. But one of the things that I notice is just how trauma can affect individuals. And in my own story, that I found out. And again, this is part of episode 7 and talking about the effects and harmful effects that it can have and the lasting effects that it can have on a woman when she experiences domestic violence. And I don't know if, people talk about it with their counselor, but I don't think they have a lot of open dialogue. They might talk about the experiences and what happened to them and, what they did as a result, but there's lasting effects. It affects how you interact with other people. It affects how you trust. It affects what you think of the opposite sex or same sex or whatever, situation it was in terms of who your partner was. It affects how you interact with your children. It affects your entire being. And one thing that I have found out is that, you know, sometimes people figure out who you are. And I don't know if they mean to be manipulative. I don't know if they aren't aware that that's what they're doing, because a lot of times you can share things, you can share past experiences. You can say, well, I went through this and this is what happened in my last relationship and this is what happened in my family, because as an effort to open up to the person that you love and that you're trying to be with, you will start to share things. Unfortunately, um, there are predators that will prey on that information. They gather it up as like they're gathering intelligence on you, and then it move through the earth and how you go along. And bear with me because my system is freezing. So every time I try to come on here and talk about these things, the devil will try to stop me. So just bear with me. Bear with me, because, like I said, my system will freeze because people don't want to talk about this topic. People don't want to engage in this sort of conversation. And I don't know if they don't want the women to have wisdom or to get knowledgeable, to get strength, to be empowered. I don't know what it is, but there is something that is trying to keep women bound in that way. And it has nothing to do with, um, creating this sense of like the new age woman or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? Every person deserves respect. Man, woman, child, just being a human in general deserves respect. And so I just feel like women are constantly exploited in so many different ways. And one of the things that can happen is that you lose a sense of self. And in one of my previous episodes, I talked about self exams and doing self examination and looking inward, because although people will say, oh, if that was me, I would do X, Y, and Z. If I was in that situation, I would do this, that, and the other. But they find that when they get in that situation, it's not so easy. It's not so easy for them to exit. It's not so easy for them to stop caring for a person. It's not so easy for them to, separate themselves or make a move or do whatever that it is. You know what I mean? I think it's easy to be on the outside looking in, talking about what you will and won't do. However, until you're actually in that situation, you really don't know what you're going to do. You don't know how someone else is going to respond to your actions. You don't know how someone's going to respond to the things that you're saying. You know what I mean? So you don't have any idea. So that's the thing that is key, is understanding and having empathy and compassion for individuals. I know that we're in the world where, no coddling, no this and no that. Now, I understand that sort of statement in terms of trying to build someone up and make sure that they're not being taken advantage of and that they can stand on their own 2 feet and those sort of things. However, I think that it's gone overboard, because what ends up happening is that people end up going through various things and no one cares. And I remember one time my daughter said that to me, and it shocked me. Because I thought, how you're this young and that's how you feel? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, really? That was amazing. I couldn't even believe it. You know what I mean? And I thought, wow, she thinks nobody cares. And I was like, and the world is turning to that. You know what I'm saying? The world is turning to that. I mean, even in terms of people not even wanting to take care of their own parents, people that are discarding their parents and throwing them in nursing homes, and um, you know what I mean, and putting their children out, and I mean doing all things. I can understand if you have an unruly child and the child is dangerous and they are harmful, and you have to take the next step and take extra measures to protect yourself. That's one thing. But people, it just seems like, you know what I mean, you got to always be on somebody else's timetable. You got to always be jumping to somebody else's tune. You got to always be doing what somebody else wants you to do, instead of people allowing into people to be who they are and who they were created to be. And I'm going to tell you that, I have been in several domestic violence situations in relationships. And at the time that I was going through them, I didn't understand or didn't examine or didn't even know, because for one, it was normal. It's something that I've seen the majority of my life. So why would I think there's anything wrong with it? I mean, of course, I didn't want it to be happening to me. However, it didn't seem real anxious to leave, because, you got to stand by your man. You got to, love him through it. And oh my goodness, it's hard out here, for a brother, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's like, it's hard out here for a sister too. You see what I'm saying? Because we have other types of things that we deal with that maybe people don't quite understand. I mean, not to mention the fact that, we were being raped early on. That's already trauma that exists, and we all know about that. But that stuff gets passed down in terms of how a woman conducts herself. And so, their purpose is only to just be under in servitude, to just constantly be underfoot. And that isn't who God created us to be. That is not, you know what I mean? Even though we can even go to the Old Testament when they talk about it in the church and how the woman should be silent. And I get where they're going with that. But I think that men have taken a lot of these things out of context in terms of what they think a woman should be doing. You know what I'm saying? And I'm saying that if you are, I can only speak from a believer standpoint. I don't know what's going on with other people, but I can only speak from a believer standpoint. And I am going to be looking at what God says. Who does God say I should be? Who does God say I am? Because men's view is distorted, and it always has been. That's why there was the fall. Humanity has always been fallen. You know what I mean? And so, because it's always going to be self centered, everything that's happening is going to be the need for self and greed and to gain more and consumption and overtaking and power. You know what I'm saying? It's always going to be that. You know what I mean? Who can I control? How many people can I control? Who can I tell what to do? Who can I, you know, rule over? You know what I'm saying? Everybody wants to be a ruler. Rule over your household, rule over the children, rule over the people in your workplace, you know what I mean, your subordinates and all of that. So there's just always this ongoing thing. But what ends up happening is that people are being diminished in the process. You know what I'm saying? People are hurting in their own lives, and then they get involved with people, and then they are diminishing the person. They are now deciding who they think the person should be. They are deciding what the person should be thinking, doing, saying, acting, feeling, all of those things. And it is control. They can try to put 45 different labels on it to spruce it up and make it sound nice, but it is control. It is control. And as we're out here talking about the king and queen mentality, I'm very careful in terms of that. I am very careful in terms of that. And it doesn't mean I feel any less royal or feel any less anything. But I think what is happening is that in the effort to make one feel better about oneself, and we are promoting the kings and queens. I'm like, first of all, let's figure out your real lineage, first of all, because really, are you? But that's neither here nor there. I'm not trying to discredit anyone's, you know, statements or who they think they are or where they came from or whatever. But there's not several kings in a kingdom. There's usually only one, and then everybody else is under them. So anyway, that's I'm getting off track. But nonetheless, in the effort to make one feel better about themselves, it is diminishing. People are walking around snuffing out the light of other people, thinking that somehow you are not rising to the level, or you are not at their level, or you somehow don't know who you are because you don't want to call yourself a king or you don't want to call yourself a queen. But I feel like all of these things that in an effort to make everybody feel good about themselves, what it's doing is creating an abusive culture. It's creating an abusive culture where people are running around talking bad about people, mm, you know, thinking like we're up here and you're down there, that sort of mentality. And I've said it before and I say it again, is that it's very reminiscent of the white supremacists. And I don't understand that. I don't understand why anyone would want to promote, uplift, encourage anything that tries to make another person feel inferior. Even when they try to talk about the hierarchy of the black woman. And maybe that is why people feel like they can abuse us, because they think that we are the low man on the totem pole. And I'm going to tell you, I've never felt like that. Now, I dealt with bullies. There was some women, they weren't women at the time, we were kids in middle school and in high school, who bullied me for whatever the reason was. To this day, I could not tell you what their problem was, but they did. You know what I mean? They tried to say all kinds of stuff, and I would examine them and be like, interesting. I don't know if you have any room to be talking about nobody. You know what I'm saying? You might want to check yourself in terms of that because you know what I'm saying. But nonetheless, I didn't engage them. You know what I'm saying? I found other ways to deal with it. But nonetheless, I don't know where that comes from. I don't know where people feel like they have to constantly be putting their foot on somebody's neck to make themselves feel good. You know what I'm saying? And that is the thing in terms of domestic violence. If you are constantly picking at someone, if you are picking them apart every time you turn around, you don't have nothing good to say about who they are, what they're doing, what they're wearing, how they're looking, how they're moving, what they're thinking, how they're feeling, who they should talk to, who they shouldn't talk to, where they should go, where they shouldn't go, all of these things, what pursuits they should have, what goals they should be having, all of these things are meaning that you are trying to rule over somebody else. And again, in terms of marriage, that is not submission, that is control. No one wants to be controlled. No one is excited and like going around and telling all their friends, like, oh my God, I just love being controlled. It feels so great. I wish I could be controlled by everyone. No one is walking around like that. Nobody wants that for their life. Nobody wants that for their children's life. And you definitely don't want that for your daughter's life. But this is what's happening. This is what's happening. And what ends up happening is that it is a repeated cycle. Most women have had more than one encounter with a domestic partner. because there was something within them. And again, a lot of times when you have this sort of dialogue, people will be like, oh, you're shaming the victim and you're blaming the victim. No, but there is something that draws a person to someone because the red flags present themselves right away. Right away. They're there. And it could be subtle, you know, but they're there, you know, and it could be anything, whatever situation you could be going through, whether it's poverty, whether it's lack, whether it's, you want a man, there for your children, you're trying to get stability, whatever that it is, there's something going on with a person individually that draws them to. And sometimes that might be that's all that's in your community. You know what I'm saying? Especially in a time like these where women are being attacked on a regular basis. Of course you want a strong man. Of course you want a man who's gonna, you know, make sure that don't nothing happen to you and protect you and all of that and lead you and show strength and all of that. The problem with some of that is that if there is still some unresolved views in terms of domestic abuse in their mind of what they think or how they think they should be moving with their partner, it's going to be a repeated cycle. And a lot of times, yes, now we are having an influx in males that are seeking healing, that are going to counseling, but that's still a small percentage. A lot of them don't believe in it. A lot of them don't want to be a part of it. They don't want to, you know, even talk to anybody, don't want nobody in their business, don't talk into this person and that person and blah, 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 blah. There's all the stigma around it. However, I'm like, somebody need to talk to somebody. Somebody needs to talk to somebody because I can bet that they have seen it somewhere along the way, whether it was from people in their neighborhood, whether it was somebody in their home life, whether it was at school, somewhere that behavior has been shown to them and it has been a pat on the back as if to say, this is okay, this is how you keep your woman in line, this is how you know be a man. And actually it's not. It's very cowardice to be aggressive toward the lesser sex. It's very cowardice because why would you, even in terms of size and strength and all of those things, why would you put yourself in a position where you are going to now cross the line? And some people haven't gone across the line, so they don't feel like they're really doing anything. If they haven't put their hands on you, then they're not really doing anything to you, but they are. The words that people say to people, they hurt, and over time it breaks a person down to where you start to question who you are and how you feel and how you're moving and who God says that you are and what your purpose is on the earth, because it's not just to cook and clean, because none of that is in the Word of God. You can't find one verse in there talking about cooking and cleaning. Now, loving your husband, that, yes, there's plenty things about that. And what all that entails, people come to their own conclusion about that. But that is not our existence. Now, yes, we are here to multiply. That's another role. We have to bring forth life. Now, there's some people that are in this point now where they don't want to do it. They see all the things that are happening to children and, families and all of that stuff, and they think they're better off. But unfortunately, you are circumventing God's will for your life because that is your purpose, is to bring forth life. Because how else are people going to get here? I know that the science, they want to start making people in the lab, but that is not God's will. But nonetheless, it diminishes a person. I have noticed I'm very guarded in the way that I move about in terms of new relationships, people, old relationships, all of those things, you know, because as soon as you feel like you let your guard down, especially if people find out that you're a giver or helper, a peacemaker, any of those things that they consider to be soft and passive, those sort of attributes, people will try to exploit those as quickly as they possibly can. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. But there is a residue that is dripping off onto the women that are experiencing violence in their home. And like I say, violence isn't always physical. If I have to be guarding my mind and have to constantly be analyzing and trying to figure out and feel like I'm, in the CIA or the FBI and I got to always be, that is stressful. You got to be figuring out, you got to decipher the code. You got to figure out, is they lying or are they telling the truth? Are they trying to hurt me or are they not trying to hurt me? Are they, you know what I'm saying? You have, if somebody's going through that all day, every day, what that does to your psyche, what that does to your physical health, that's why people probably are suffering from all types of ailments, you know? And I'm just thinking, like, why would you want to be battling? I mean, the word tells us to be one flesh with our spouse. So you are killing your own flesh. You're killing your own self when you degrade your woman, belittle her, call her out her name, diminish her light. You're killing your own self, you see, because there is a thing that you can't bring to the home that the woman does. There are things that she innately has going on for her that you won't have because you're not a woman. We are nurturers, you know, but even that gets exploited. We want to solve it. We want to comfort. We want to woo woo. And that's what makes women hard, though. That's where that comes from. Women are not just born with just some masculine energy and they're just running around trying to be a man. That isn't what's happening, And I've heard it before, and not so much in my past, but recently, where they have tried to spin this narrative as if to say that black women are the only women who are aggressive or who are, we're angry, we're this and that. And I'm like, have you ever thought to find out what we're angry about? you know, People that are just angry just to be angry, you know? And so I'm like, there is things that are happening to our young girls. And even academically, even if you get all the accolades in the world, even if you get all of that, because some of the women, who have been hurt on the channel that I follow, some of those women who have been hurt, they are, they've got higher education. And, so there's all varying, degrees and levels of where women are at. It's not just, the poverty stricken woman. There are many types of women who go through that, and you might go back to your community because you want to have a black family, you want your children to be black, and so therefore you want to go and be. And like I say, every time this discussion comes up, some reason there is some sort of spin as if to say that, oh, we're down in, black men and we're doing this. No, many of us are trying to find out why this keeps happening and who is perpetuating it and who is carrying the torch. You know what I'm saying? And I've seen, unfortunately, why it continues. You know what I'm saying? Because I understand in supporting, giving support, a person does something that's foul and now they're caught up in the system and everybody needs support. I get that. But if you ain't honest with that person and telling them how foul and wrong what they did was, I love you, but that was foul. I love you, but that was wrong. And I have a perfect example of that. When we were younger, my brother had an incident, where he put his hand on a young girl at school. My mother nipped that in the bud immediately. First of all, she was like, hit me, hit me. Let me see you hit me. And then we piled in the car and we drove over to this woman's house, and she made my brother apologize to her and her mother. And she told him to his face, she ain't raising no woman beater in her house. You see? So nipping it in the bud early on, you see what I'm saying? But sometimes it can't be nipped in the bud because if the mom is already going through the thing, then there's no way for her to protect her son, you see? Because he's already picked it up. He's already learned it, especially if a person stays. There's a lot of, you know, guilt surrounding leaving your marriage and walking away and doing all of this, for whatever reason. People have their reasons and all of that. Sometimes they're in a position where they can't leave. If they didn't work, never worked, and they didn't have any income and they, relied solely on the man, then, maybe they're not in a position to leave. So now they're there. But that, what they're teaching their son is that I can do all of these things to my woman and she's never going to leave me. That's what is being taught to your son, you know. And so I am just trying to figure out and talk about why these things continue on because it is something. And especially when you see the parents on the news and they're talking about, sometimes they say they saw the things or they didn't get a good vibe from this person or this and that, but you have to be asking yourself as the parent, why was my daughter drawn to this man in the first place? These are questions that need to be asked. So anyway, I'm just saying that, it is changing who we are as women. You know what I'm saying? All of this stuff is out of order and it's a shame. It's a shame. You know what I'm saying? And I had a perfect example of how, I just know it just, your guard is up. The walls are up. There's, you know what I mean? And you can't even get a chisel to chisel it away, you know? And people are in support of that stuff. People are in support of this behavior, and I don't know when we moved to a culture of supporting that. Because like I said, there was a time when a lot of men, they did not play that. They didn't like that, those type of people around. You know, it was not to be tolerated. You know what I'm saying? But for some reason, it's like now people are like, well, what did they do? They could never do enough. You know what I'm saying? If they're not physically violent toward the person, where a person has to be restrained, that's a whole different type of situation, where you feel like you're being attacked. But sometimes the person will say that they thought somebody was going to do something. And so then they, what, shot them? I'm like, that's the same thing that we're complaining about that the police is doing. You felt threatened, so you shot her. So that's what I'm saying. I'm like, it's like a double standard. It's okay. We outrage when the police do it, but we're not outraged when the men are doing it to their wives and girlfriends and children's mothers. And there might be a small outrage, but not to the level that I'm seeing. Because everything now is the police, 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 the police. And that's well and good. There is a lot of violence that's happening at the hands of the police. However, there is also a lot of death and destruction and dysfunction that's happening at the hands of man towards women. And at some point, we're going to have to be honest about that. So, anyway, I thank you for listening. Thank you for stopping by. Continue to watch episodes. Again, this is going to be episode 7 of the Rose Petals Revive series. I will be continuing to post videos. Please like, share, and subscribe. Turn on your notifications so that you can be alerted when videos come. I thank you so much for taking the time. And again, I am here for discussion. And another thing, one of the things that is important to me is that I don't get into the fluff and stuff, in terms of what is happening in the video and the editing and the all of that, because it's about the message. You know what I'm saying? I don't need the glitz and glamour to get a message across and a point of view and to speak truth. because I find that people might gravitate toward things where, it's like, oh, the fancy lights in the background and, the pretty background and all of this other stuff that goes on. But the message is being missed because we're so focused on the background, you know. And so, anyway, I'm thankful that I have a voice and can articulate these things and I can talk about these things and I will continue to highlight and talk about these things to whoever, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm tired of it, frankly. I'm tired of it, frankly. And like I said, I have seen this since I was a youth, consistently, consistently, whether it was myself or friends or family. And at some point, this has got to stop. You know what I'm saying? Because if we're going to keep, killing the life bearer, then there won't be no life. You see, a man can't have children. I know that they're trying in some areas, but it's not going to work. You need the woman to bring forth life. And if they're all dead, then what? We're just having a population of people just walking around and it's just what? Death to the earth. But there are some people on this earth that want to burn it all down. They want to see it burn. You know, life is miserable for them and unhappy or whatever is going on. And so they like death and destruction and drama. But some people don't want that and they want better. And I definitely want better for the daughters because there's a lot of talk about the young men, but I want to talk about the young daughters. And like I said, education does not solve the problem. That just allows you to take care of yourself and sustain yourself and make money. But it doesn't solve the issue at hand that keeps being perpetuated and keeps being passed down generationally. You know, something is not quite right. Something is not quite right. And while I applaud all that, we have, everybody's out there and higher learning and it looks wonderful. But when I just see that people are dying at school now, even young girl goes to school, she's like tired of the mess, she's trying to get herself together. And then the person follows her there because it's like, what? You're not leaving me behind. So I'm going to take your future because I don't think I have one. I mean, seriously, this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So anyway, there are solutions, but I think self-exams are the key. And sometimes you may not uncover it all, because a lot of times I think that I don't know during people's sessions or whatnot what they talk about, and they might not get to the root of the problem. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes it's easier to talk about the behaviors of others versus our own behaviors and recognizing why it is that we might end up in such situations or even gravitate in friends, because that's another thing that occurs is a trickle effect, because you're in these situations with the opposite sex or your partner and whatnot. And so then every relationship that you have is also abusive. Your friendships, you gravitate toward people that are constantly taking something from you. All of your relationships seem similar in some way, and you probably don't even realize that that's what's happening. But every person that's in your circle exhibits similar behavior. That's why people, friends, be falling out with each other and arguing and doing all of this stuff. The same thing that you're going through with your husband is the same thing that's happening in your personal relationships as well, whether it's family or friends. So I'm hoping that some of these things will begin to stop and there will be a decrease in the amount of women that are suffering at the hands of men. I really, really do. So anyway, thank you. And again, please share, like, subscribe, and I hope to see you next time.